Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. Let's talk today about ways you can actually come out to your kids. A lot of you have been asking me this question, what is the best way to come out to kids? So I'd like to address it today and share with you some of my experience, what I witnessed, and how kids tend to react or tend to respond to when a parent comes out as transgender. First of all, I'm going to break this video today into three categories because I know that those of you watching, those of you parents who are watching this fall into different categories. Some of you have kids that are already growing up and living by themselves and they're adults. Some of you have kids who are teenagers and still living with you. And some of you have kids who are really, really young and obviously also still living with you. So let's look at the first category. This is category for those of you who are, I'm assuming would fall in the older in terms of your own age group because your kids are now adults. Your kids are most likely going to be anywhere age perhaps 25 and all the way up. So what to do when you fall into this category? You have kids who are adults who are living perhaps away from you, who are having their own lives. How to best come out to them. And in my experience, the best way to come out to your adult kids is the same way you would come out to your loved ones. And that is hopefully, if you can't, sit down face to face with them. If you can't, especially right now because of pandemic, either get them on a phone, Zoom, or the other case scenario is to write them a brief email. And basically just to let them know that, hey, I've been dealing with gender dysphoria for majority of my life. I've come to a point in my life where I realized I identify as transgender, and in order to alleviate the symptoms of gender dysphoria that I'm experiencing, I'm gonna undergo some elements or all elements, whatever you decide to do, of gender transition. At this point, if you have already chosen a preferred name and a pronoun, is a good time to share with the kids. Now, in my experience, the older your kids are, the more likely they also have been affected by societal transphobia. This also depends what are your values and what are your beliefs that they have accumulated throughout their life. So for example, if you have a child that is highly religious, that religious belief may also affect how they see and understand your issue. You have a child that has grew up in a very kind of isolated, transphobic, homophobic environment, that's also going to affect their belief. So the older they are, again, the more they have been, in a way, brushed up by societal transphobia, homophobia, and all of those horrible negative things that society tends to produce. And as a result, it tends to come up in their psyche. So the older kids respond in a lot of different ways. One great scenario is when your adult kids are loving, they're supportive, they're accepting, they say, you know what, I'm sorry, I had no idea this was going on, I totally support you, I'm going to be here by your side, whatever you need, I'm here for you. The next case scenario is when they're supportive, but they're having a hard time accepting it, and the hard time accepting it comes from their own internal struggle with how they see transgender identity. The third type of scenario is when they're neither accepting nor supportive and they're really pushing back against you. And hopefully none of you have to experience the third type of scenario. People always ask me what to do when you come out to adult kids and adult kids are not being accepting nor are being supportive. What to do in those scenarios? And to be honest, there's not much you can do. The way I tend to look at the situation is that you're an adult, they're adults, you have done your parental responsibility of taking care of them, bringing them up into this world and giving them all the best things and tools and resources that they can have in order to go out there and live their own lives. And at this point, they are living their own lives. So the way I see it is there has to be this level of just acknowledgement and being mindful and being respectful that this is your decision and you're an adult, and no matter how they may feel about your decision, that is still your life. And so hopefully it's going to come to that type of outcome. So there's really, if your kids are pushing against it and they're adults, it gives them some time, perhaps share some information with them, let them know that you're there. When they're ready to talk to you about it, try to check in with them if you haven't heard from them in at least 2-3 months. Check in again. Sometimes it takes a while to break their ice with adult kids, and hopefully they tend to come through. But usually, if they're superimposing a lot of transphobic and homophobic and just all other types of phobic projective ideals onto you, also keep in mind that a lot of it's societal, and hopefully they themselves will recognize and back off. But that's really the best way to come out when you have adult kids, is to do it just like you would do with anybody else. Now, second category of parents out there watching this are parents who have teenagers, who has anybody who is age, I would say probably 10, 11, all the way to age 16, even up to age 18. We're talking about teens. We're talking about that period of our development when your children who are teenagers at this point are very... as you know, depending on where they are in the teenage period, it could be in that time of their life where they're experiencing this autonomy, where I know what's right for me, I know what's best for me, I can exist without my parents, the type of rebellious, healthy dose of spirit. So how to come out to kids when they're teens? Well, again, the same way you would come out to your loved ones. You sit down with them and you tell them just how it is. And in my experience, teenagers today are so incredibly saturated with awareness of gender diversity and gender inclusion that chances are of them not supporting you or not accepting you, in my experience, are very slim. Now, what I do see happening with teenagers is this. If for some reason you've been keeping the secret away from your teens for a long period of time, especially if you are in a relationship with somebody else and that partner in a relationship already knows what you're struggling with, already knows you identify as transgender, and there's the tension between you and your partner, chances are your teenager kids are feeling it. They're feeling the tension. They're feeling something is going on. Kids are very perceptive. They're like a sponge. So the chances, even with you being present but not really present, which happens when we struggle with gender dysphoria, will indicate to your teens that something is off. So what I often see is when you come out to teenagers, if you teens may experience a sense of betrayal, if you will, in a sense that, wait a second, I'm not dummy. I've been picking up on all of the things going on. Something was going on, and you didn't really feel like you could trust me enough to tell me from the beginning, and I had to play this guessing game and create this assumptive scenarios in my head what was going on. So in the beginning, what I witnessed sometimes, if that has been your context, is that teenagers will feel that push against you, but it's not a push that they're not accepting your identity. It's a push that, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you trust me? Why couldn't you disclose it sooner? So that's the type of push that I tend to witness. Very rarely do I see parents coming out to teens where teens are feeling like they're not going to support you or accept you. Except with another scenario that I tend to see is that if a teenager has strongly over-identified themselves with your gender role. So for example, and this is going to be very, very binary because that's usually what tends to happen, when a teenager, for example, over-identifies with being, and this is going to be very classical stereotypes, but it is unfortunately still happens, when a boy is strongly identified with a father figure, it feels like, there's this learning from this father role, this masculine, and then suddenly the father may come out as carrying all this feminine energies and identifying as a woman. The boy may feel a little bit of rebelliousness against it because there's this internal feeling of temporary loss of this figure role, and now the mind is trying to grasp, well, what does it mean now? Does it mean now that I will not carry this masculine or not have this masculine strong archetypal energy in my household? And the same thing can happen with the girls, and it can happen in different crisscross scenarios where the girl may over-identify with the father, the boy may over-identify with the mother, you name it. But that's another thing that may come up where these kids are not even aware that that's what's happening. It often happens on an unconscious level, and they will push against you. Rarely again do I see teenagers push against you because you identify as transgender. As I said, if anything, to them this world is very fluid. One of the things that a lot of you tend to ask me and to be very concerned about coming out to teens is that I really worry about how the peers are going to perceive the situation. In other words, I really worry that the peers of my teen are going to give my teen a hard time. What if I'm going to go and pick up my child at school and I'm going to be there presenting as myself, and as a result, my youngster is going to have a hard time. Again, depending on your life, yes, that is a possibility, but usually the chances are teenagers at that point, at that stage, really honor authenticity and they really honor honesty. And so, if anything, you're really modeling to your teen a way to live an authentic life, a way to be true to yourself. And if you already had a good relationship with your teen up to this point, even though it may be difficult for them to get any pushback from their peers, if your teen is very kind of gender open-minded, chances are they already have a group of peers who are just like them, just like-minded, who are also most likely some of your teens already have friends who are either gender fluid, non-binary, maybe even transgender. That's also very, very common. So I wouldn't really worry about how this might affect the peer relationship for your teen. Let them learn that, let them go through the process and be there to support them. But more of anything, you're really modeling and mirroring to them how to be a very true, authentic self. And I think that is absolutely vital and important and the best gift in so many ways that we can give to our children. Now, on to the third category, and that is those of you who are parents to very, very young children. I'd say probably from the age 4, because that's around the age when kids are starting to understand the concept of their gender identity, and all the way up to age, let's say age 10, which is, I just named it as the teenage years. So you're having these younger children, and especially the younger they are, so sometimes some of you are getting more concerned about how to come out because you feel like it may be very challenging and difficult to explain to the younger kids what's going on. And while kids have a strong sense of their gender in relationship to their sex, all the way as young as age 4, they're still lacking in the capacity to mentalize what exactly you're telling them. So this idea that I am a boy or I am a girl can come up really early. And again, sadly, that's still a very binary idea. But they will have a hard time mentalizing when you sit down with them and when you try to explain to them that you identify as transgender, because the vocabulary of transgender and understanding of transgender is still not something that contextually exists in their mind. So with younger children, what makes it so difficult is that you have to revisit the explanation phase again and again and again. And sometimes you can use books. There's some really great children books to read, and I'm gonna link one below, which is A Story Where Red Crayon, one of my favorite books to read to your child to talk about understanding gender. It's really good. You can get it on Amazon. So the younger kids you're going to just have to revisit it that much often so that we can explain to them again and again and again what's going on and just reinforce this idea and just teach them to understand gender diversity. What sometimes happens with younger kids that I witnessed is that at this stage, they want to mimic you, they want to model after you. So let's say if some of you identify as trans feminine, and you say that now you express your feminine name to your child, then the kid sometimes might want to imitate you. They might want to say, well, I want to change my name too. Well, I want to change how I express myself too. I want to change my gender expression too. Sometimes parents ask me and they get really freaked out in a sense that what does it mean now for my child identity? And again, you can't make a child to have or carry transgender identity. The environment is just not enough for that. So usually they will imitate you for a little bit. That's their sense of support. That's their sense of solidarity. And then they'll drop it and they'll go back to their name and their gender identity, whatever that may be for them at that moment. So there's really no fear for that. So that's the best way to come out to the kids, is just to sit down and just, explain in the very basic, simplistic terms, using very basic terminology of whatever age your child may be at that point. If you're talking to a 5-year-old, use the terminology that's going to be familiar to a 5-year-old. Get those books. There's some other great books on Amazon you can read that can help explain gender concepts to a child. But again, keep in mind that at this age, the younger they are, they're going to have a harder way to mentalize. Now, as the older they are, it'll be easier for them to mentalize. So, for somebody who is age, I would say 7 to 10, will have an easier way to mentalize transgender identities than somebody who is younger. So, keep in mind, you'll just have to revisit it with them. But that's pretty much about it. At this stage, they're so young, and I actually think it's amazing that parents are able to transition when their kids are this young, because in a ways they can adopt along with you. But in any case, in any one of the scenarios, whether your kids are very young, teenagers or adults, keep in mind they're your children, you love them. And to me, personally, I think it's essential things that you're modeling honesty and authenticity to them, something that is so essential for them to be able to live this life and to thrive in this life and to have a joyful and happy life. And hopefully this is helpful. Comment below, share, let me know what age category group you have kids, whether you have already came out to your children, how did it go, what were your obstacles, how did you overcome those obstacles. Keep in mind, all of the viewers tend to read everybody's comment because we're all learning from each other, and that way it tends to be very helpful to a lot of people who have not yet come out to kids. If you have children and you want to come out to your children, what is holding you back? What are you afraid? Again, a lot of times people are really afraid how this information is going to affect their kids. And in my experience, the younger they are, the less affected they're going to be by it. The older they are, they're going to be more affected by their own internalized stuff that they inherited from society, and less so affected by your self-disclosure. So keep that in mind. Comment below. Always love reading your comments, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.